Welcome to the Drop the Mic Wrestling Podcast on Tobacco Road Sports Radio and TobaccoRoadSportsRadio.com as part of the Wrestling Wednesday card. I'm your host, Michael Davis. As always, it's an action-packed hour on Drop the Mic today. SummerSlam has received negative attention so far, and it's all because of what the Usos and the Bloodline stories happened. We're going to talk a lot of WWE hot topics, including the Usos, Rey Mysterio, Bray Wyatt, some news coming out about him. And is this Edge's final time in the WWE? He has a match on SmackDown this Friday. And we'll also talk some AEW. There's a lot of drama surrounding CM Punk. Go figure. The Jericho Appreciation Society disbands. And Jeff Jarrett versus Jeff Hardy and Texas Chainsaw Massacre match. A lot to talk about today. We're back with another Mike and Mike Talk Wrestling edition of Drop the Mic. So welcome in my guest from a couple weeks ago, the host of the Mouthing Off with Mike Wrestling podcast, the other Mike, right now on Drop the Mic. Mike, there's a lot of mics there. We referenced earlier. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing wonderful. It's always great to be welcomed on Drop the Mic with you, Mike. I'm ready to talk some SummerSlam backlash, some CM Punk backlash, and I'm ready to get into this. So let's do it, brother.
Dude, let's do it. And there's a lot of backlash. Now, we're not talking about the pay-per-view name, of course. That was way back with WrestleMania Backlash. But we are on the heels of SummerSlam, and we're in the rearview mirror when it comes to the highest event of the summer. Now, I went on record of saying on Outta Pocket with Michael Davis on Tobacco Road Sports Radio and WWBG 1470 AM last week. We're moving to 3, by the way, guys. So if you're watching this on Tobacco Road Sports Radio's YouTube channel and you try to come in at 4, it's going to be over. You can catch the replay. But if you want to interact and engage with us Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern time, I believe noon, where Mike's at.
This is
There's
true.
there's a 3-hour difference from us. You'll be able to engage in the comments. We'll flash your comment on the screen and talk some sports. But right now we're talking wrestling because the fallout from SummerSlam was Jey Uso coming out and basically super kicking everybody, saying, "I'm out, I quit, deuces," and running up the stairs. Now, I don't know about you, Mike, but I have some thoughts about Friday's SmackDown and how everything unraveled about the Bloodline. What do you think about the whole Jimmy turning on Jay and then what we saw on SmackDown?
So, you know, we had this. You and I had this discussion on the other day about the internet wrestling community and everybody. As soon as Jimmy super kicked Jay at SummerSlam, everyone said, "Oh, that's it. The Bloodline story, it doesn't make sense. It's over. It's finished. Why would they do this? This makes zero sense. Why would Jimmy kick his brother?" And then Friday, we come to find out that reason being why. Jimmy was scared. And people, I think people jumped the shark on the jump the shark comments. I think we, for 3 years, have let this play out and it's been cinema. I think we should just let this play out and see where this takes us. But I'm all invested in this. I would love to see Jay pop up or just videos of Jay doing things outside of WWE. I don't know. How do you feel about this?
So I will go ahead and say everybody, getting upset. They're like Bloodline stories gotten stale. Absolutely not. There's a reel on Instagram with me and Shannon that's gotten like 1,500 views right now. Go check that out. This story is the best story in wrestling. That hasn't changed the last couple weeks. I will say I'm a little confused about Jey Uso and leaving WWE. It felt a little weird. It was like, huh. So now you're, taking Jey Uso off. I don't know if this is to help the entire bloodline get healthy because we know that Roman Reigns is dealing with an injury right now. I don't know if this is backlash with Rikishi posting on social media that he was going to referee a Jay versus Jimmy match at Payback, and they're trying to delay this. I don't know where that comes in, but I don't even know how you get Jey Uso back into WWE and at what timetable. That's why I'm trying to figure out. Maybe you have an idea of how to add him back into the story.
I see what you're saying in regards to the storyline where it's like, yeah, he can quit, but how do we bridge the gap and get him back in the fold is really the ultimate question for everyone. I I figured Jay would pop up possibly on Raw or an NXT or something, not SmackDown, or possibly maybe you don't see Jay for a while. Maybe it's just mum's the word. Jay pops up during a Roman title fight, which, could happen. There's still a whole division of guys on SmackDown that are vying for title opportunities. And if Jay's gone, Jimmy's doing his own thing. Who's next for Roman? So maybe Jay comes and interferes in the match. I am in the same kind of boat you're in, where if I were to sit here and think about it hard, you might start seeing smoke come out of my ears, because I really don't know what you do to bring him back in. There's a couple ways, I think, obviously having him show up on different shows with WWE. I personally, if there is an independent promotion that is affiliated with WWE in some capacity, I don't know if there is, but if there is, maybe the one with Booker T, have him pop up. That's what I'd like to see. If you could fantasy book it in an ideal situation, Jay pops up on the indie scene and makes news everywhere. It's breaking news. Oh, Jey Uso popped up in Booker T's promotion. What's he doing here? I don't know. It's a tough one. For me, I'm gonna let it play out and see where they take us, because I've been enjoying the ride.
Yeah, just enjoy the ride of the bloodline. That's the most important thing. I love your idea about him appearing at like Booker T's indie promotion, or if they have a good partnership with somebody. I'm thinking this is just personally, I would love AML in North Carolina to do it. We've had some WWE legends come to their WrestleCade convention in November around Thanksgiving time. That's just personally, I would be there if Jey Uso was there, of course. But that's all it takes in the social media age to spark some controversy. I don't know if Raw or NXT is good, because until he said I'm leaving SmackDown, okay, he can show up on Raw and NXT,
Right.
and then he's like I'm leaving WWE. I'm like, well, that just takes Raw and NXT out of it. Um, and I was also replaying this last year around this time. We had Clash at the Castle. Dominic Mysterio turned on Edge and turned on his father, Rey Mysterio. But they didn't meet up until WrestleMania. They were able to, kind of separate them and then eventually bring them back together for a full story. I'm starting to think maybe they're just wanting to push this Jay versus Jimmy off until next year's WrestleMania 40 in the link, because of Jay's comments a couple months ago saying his dream is to wrestle Jimmy at WrestleMania.
If that's the case, and we are long-term story, the brother versus brother eventual match between Jimmy and Jay, and it's going to be a WrestleMania 40 match, then we have a lot of gaps to fill in. There's a lot of space then to fill in, because you can hold Jay off TV for a couple months maybe, but then people are going to start to say, okay, well, what is happening with the story? And so this is where I think you have to kind of find that happy medium, where ideally, yeah, I would love to see it happen at WrestleMania, but is that too far off? Is it because we started it in August, Clash of the Castle September? It's only a month off, so it's plausible. I think you're in the right department with all the rumors and everything you see with being a WrestleMania match between the two, even them themselves saying it in an interview last year during Mania. That's more than likely what it'll be. An opening or a main event for night one of WrestleMania, possibly.
Yeah, they were able to hold off that Ray and Dom storyline. So we'll have to see what happens with the bloodline. In the meantime, Rey Mysterio pops up back from this injury. He sustained an injury with Santos Escobar in a match and eventually won the United States title against Austin Theory. Kudos to Rey Mysterio, still going at it. But Mike, as much as I respect Rey Mysterio and his work, I can't say I was a little disappointed that Santos Escobar didn't get his moment to shine if you were going to take the title off Austin Theory. What did you think of how they went about it in terms of Santos getting hurt, Rey Mysterio replacing him, and eventually ended the entire reign of Austin Theory.
That was a little murky for me. I'll admit that 100%. Little murky on the how we got here. For me, this might be the one and only time you and I disagree. I was ecstatic. I was so happy Ray won. Listen,
These
this
mics
might
can't
get.
disagree, man. Come on.
I know mics can't disagree. Listen, I know it might be
It was
the
in the
first and only
contract,
time.
man.
I know that NDA's thrown out the window now.
The breach of contract, man. We'll might have to end this partnership a little too
Oh
early.
no. But no, in all actuality, in all serious, Ray has a special place in my heart. That's a childhood guy for us, childhood guy for me. Ultimate underdog story. It makes me feel good. Now, listen, I agree. Is it a little bit murky? We could have seen Santos win his first singles title on the main roster. He's the youth. It made sense. He was the rightful number one contender. He went through the matches. He obviously the Ray and him match didn't really go as planned, but he moved on. It should have been Santos versus Theory. Now, do I think it's setting up the Santos heel turn down the line? Yes, I think so. I think the LWO at some point is going to splinter. Santos is maybe going to take a little personal interest, in the fact that Ray's holding the title. It should have been him. So Legado may reform, and you may see the LWO form, a new LWO form. Maybe that rumored Carlito signing. Maybe that Bad Bunny reappearance where you get Legado versus the LWO. So I think there's a couple different ways to do it. I'm personally so happy for Ray. At this point in the game, did he need the title? No. Santos definitely could have used it. But for the moment, and a lot of people have been complaining about the whole Theory title run, which I am in the other side of the bucket. I give him props because realistically, after Mania, his momentum fell off. And yet he still had a good title run even before then. So if you kind of exclude the post-Mania momentum drop-off, I thought he had a decent title run, being the youth, the rookie on the main roster at the time, Theory. Now we need to figure out what to do with Theory and then what we do with the U.S. title picture, because I think this opens up doors for other people to get eyes. And personally, I think that's what it's all about.
Yeah, especially a title like the U.S. title, it's usually an afterthought. Like, let's be honest, that Intercontinental title is the cream of the crop in terms of, that mid-card status, thanks to The Miz, thanks to Dolph Ziggler, thanks to Gunther in the last year plus for doing the work he's done. The United States title often gets forgotten about. I still remember like that 300-day reign that Dean Ambrose had just very randomly as part of the Shield, and nobody like acknowledged it. And that's difficult. Like we mentioned, Austin Theory's title run, kind of slacked off against WrestleMania. That was the peak of it. Like, if Roman's supposed to get to The Rock, that's going to be the peak of his title run. And then you need to, find the next challenger. I feel like they waited too long for Austin Theory because Austin Theory beat his childhood hero, John Cena. The next pay-per-view could have been the right opportunity to get the title off Theory and build a new star. I really love your idea of LWO versus Legado and building a heel Santos. I really hope so, because that's my only hope is Ray is a transition to get Santos better. Because if Santos beat Theory, he's getting cheered.
Mm-hmm.
If Santos beats Ray, he's getting booed, but it's good heat.
Yeah, 100%. And or they don't do that route at all, and Santos and him have a good old sportsmanship match and shake hands after it, and that's the story, right? One or the other.
It'll be one or the other. But fans, sometimes they're always, just negative, like the IWC. And I want to go on record. We all owe Bray Wyatt an apology, because Bray Wyatt, I love Bray, by the way. Been a fan of his since NXT Wyatt family days. And I've always rooted for him. Super excited when he came back last year. He's only wrestled one match because they needed the character development and the story. He wrestled against LA Knight. And then here comes what we now know is a career-threatening and life-threatening illness that was, brought up to the media this week. And everybody's trashing Bray on him being a bust of a signing. And now, look, once you have all the details, that's a prime example. Don't speak unless you have the full story. That's a good lesson for every one of us, whether you're in media or you're just a fan. Um, what was your initial reaction to the news that broke on Bray? And I want you to weigh in on the criticism Bray has received last year. Was it fair? Was it not fair? What's your take?
You know, this could be said about so many wrestlers that I see talked about on the internet wrestling community, where it wasn't fair. The criticism, it wasn't. It's not entirely fair. You can't go out here and as a fan and bash these people without knowing who they are. It's like going into a restaurant and telling the chef that you're going to cook your meal and you're cooking everybody's meal because you feel you're a great cook because your family told you, oh, you're a good cook. You can't know anything about the guy's life. You have no idea what's going on in his life. You can only see speculation. You can see dirt sheets. You can see, the TMZs of the world, whatever. But for everyone to criticize him, and then now the news come out, of course, that what he was out with was life threatening, which a part of me is a little upset that even got out. That's some really serious personal information that actually got out. Obviously, the details were kept quiet, due to the HIPAA laws and things like that. But just for people to even say like, "Hey, this guy had a life-threatening injury," kind of, But then again, you're a well-known talent in the world, and you do have a magnifying glass on you, so that does come with the territory. But the criticism's unfair. I am a big fan of his as well. I've been a big fan of his, much like that the NXT early days, the Wyatt family. And I think whenever the time is right for him to come back and he's fully healthy, healed, and ready to go, I will be so happy to see him, and I will be the first person to, be excited for whatever that storyline may be. Until then, only thoughts and prayers go to Bray Wyatt.
Of course, and I couldn't have said it better myself, Mike. Catch his stuff with Mouthing Off with Mike, that podcast on Spotify that broke into the top 200 podcasts of Great Britain. I gotta figure out how I can get myself on that list. It's not fair. You're further away from Great Britain and everything, and for some reason you're on the list, and Drop the Mic is nowhere to be found. I got to figure out how to get on that list, Mike. I don't know if you can share some tips or whatever, but that would be very, very useful. And so with Bray Wyatt, I don't think the criticism's fair. One thing I do want to point out with Bray Wyatt is he is one of the best. He is one of the best in the last, honestly, the last decade. His debut, his WrestleMania 30 match against John Cena. We'll get Mike back in on the video feed. We'll get him back on here shortly, but if Bray doesn't get the chance to return, because that's a possibility, knowing the details now, if Bray Wyatt can't return, it'd be very frustrating. It'd be very disappointing. But man, I think his legacy is going to be one of the better storytellers of our generation, and a lot of potential that wasn't foreseen. But if he does get to return, if Bray does get to return to the WWE, then I'm excited to see him against Cody Rhodes. Mike and I were talking backstage from the Mouthing Off with Mike podcast about maybe doing another Firefly Funhouse with Cody, taking him through Dashing, taking him through Legacy, taking him through Stardust, taking him through like an all-in version, doing something like that to, just elevate Cody and give him something else to do during the wrestling podcast time frame. So yeah, Big shout out to Bray Wyatt with speedy recovery. Hopefully, it'd be a travesty if Bray can't return. Now, do want to remind you guys to go follow the wrestling movement on Facebook, Tobacco Road Sports Radio personalities, Ryan Frick. I do the Cat Cave with him. He does a wrestling podcast as well on Wednesday afternoons, Tap Outs and Touchdowns. Myself, Shan Smith. You've had Shannon on plenty of times with the Drop the Mic podcast. Then we also have Desmond Johnson, of course, the Tobacco Road Sports Radio producer. He does a solid job. He does a solid job doing it. And I don't know how he finds the time to contribute to this wrestling page. We have several other admins that you have not seen on Drop the Mic yet, but we will get them on very soon. We're going to get Mike back in here real quick to continue talking about some big WWE stuff. Everyone tuning in on our video feed should know that I'm a first aid CPR certified person. And we got Mike from Mouthing Off with Mike back in here. Mike, welcome back.
It's good to be back. Yeah, some technical difficulties on my end. My bad, everybody. But we are back. Let's get into our conversation.
Of course. Mike is back, and what better way to share this than somebody else who returned to television this week? Piper Niven comes back as Chelsea Green's new tag team partner and one half of the women's tag team champions. I love the Chelsea's Got Talent that Chelsea Green did on social media this week. It was superb. My hope was that Matt Cardona would be the tag team partner. I'm a little disappointed that Piper Niven was the replacements for Sonya Deville. I don't know how she works through it. What's your take on this?
Ooh, you're coming with the hard-hitting questions, right? Getting right back into it. I love it. I'm so happy to see Piper Niven back on my television screen. I had been wondering where she had been for quite some time. And she comes back in the form of Chelsea's tag partner, which, makes a little bit of sense. They did tag in the past. Hey, hold on.
I'll let you talk. I'll let you talk. I'll let you mouth off.
Yeah, let me set the stage here. They've tagged in the past, and it makes a little bit of sense. Now, I do understand from a logic standpoint where this makes no sense. Piper's been off TV for months. She just pops in and now she's like, "Hey, I'm the tag champ with you. Let's go defend the titles next week." Okay, sure, let's do it. But from the booking standpoint, I get it. They just had to give up the tag titles. We just saw the whole thing with Liv and Raquel just 2.5 months ago. Gave up the titles. Then Ronda and Shayna won them, unified them against Alba and Isla. Also, where are they? And then now we're back with Shayna turning on Ronda. Liv and Raquel are the champs. Chelsea and Sonya win them. Sonya gets hurt, which that match she got hurt in shouldn't have even happened, but here we are, of course. And how do you fill the gaps here? Because if you do it again where you strip the titles off them and you run another tournament, I feel like more people are going to complain then because it's like, oh, here we go, another tournament for the tag titles. I'm going to let it play out, but yeah, there's it's like a catch here where it's like it partly makes sense, but it also partly makes absolutely no sense at all. So I'm kind of in the middle here where it's like, I'm going to let it see what happens.
Well, see, and that's the other thing is like this has happened so much. We could almost make the case that the women's tag titles are cursed, from like, yeah, so much needs to be done or said right there.
Yeah.
Where they'll win it and then, Sasha and Naomi decide to leave because the division's not being taken care of. Oh, Dakota Kai gets hurt. Oh, Liv Morgan gets hurt. And now Sonya Deville gets hurt. And I feel like I'm missing one or two big things that's happened because this is the narrative. Yeah. And I wasn't a big fan of the women's tag titles getting introduced because I felt like they wouldn't put a lot of stake in them to begin with. And now it's just like, come on, what weight do these tag titles have right now? Because again, like these are makeshift tag teams and I don't know. I'm just not bought into Piper and Chelsea.
Yeah, I thought we were gonna finally have like a cohesive, like believable tag team in the form of Sonya and Chelsea, and then it gets taken from us. So I feel very similar in the sense of these titles might very well be cursed. So we might have to bust out the sage, maybe go see somebody to, exercise the demons from these titles because yeah, it's unfortunate, but every time we feel that there's a little bit of momentum with the women's tag division, it is drastically halted. And then you end up in a scenario like this, which I hate to see it happen because there's so many talented women between all three shows of WWE where it's like a tag division makes so much sense, but yet every time we get close, it's taken from us. And I don't know what you do at this point. Hopefully they can make it work with Chelsea and Piper. But if not, then maybe the conversation has to be spoken about a different secondary title, or not, maybe not secondary title, but a different title for the ladies entirely then.
Yeah, maybe even a mid card women's title instead of the tag titles, but we'll have to see what happens there. And sometimes the women, or at least the right women, can't even get on pay per view. And your last appearance a couple weeks ago, we talked about this. We talked about Trish Stratus and Becky Lynch being left off of SummerSlam. We were not happy about it. So they had a match a couple nights ago on Monday Night Raw. Zoe Stark gets involved. Everything happens. And now we get Becky Lynch and Trish Stratus inside a steel cage. That'll be their next contest. They haven't officially announced as of this podcast when it's going to be. Is it going to be next week's Raw? Is it going to be at the Payback Premium Live event? What are you excited about this steel cage match? And do you think this justifies leaving them off SummerSlam? And Triple H was okay saying, be patient.
Yeah, and I guess from now on, I'm gonna have to start listening to the game a little bit more with being patient because he cooked something up here where I'm content with it. I'm pumped to see this steel cage match because we were robbed. If you recall, just a year ago, maybe longer, just under a year, we were robbed of Becky and Bailey in a steel cage. So now we're finally getting Becky in a steel cage against Trish, a match that she's openly said is a match that she's wanted to compete her whole career, and she would love to do it during this run. And now we're getting that. As for not being on SummerSlam, I think you could have still had fit them in, done the same thing you did on Raw, where you had a double count out and advance the storyline into Payback, or if they're going to do the steel cage on Raw, then so be it. But I'm pumped for the steel cage. I think the chemistry between them was a little off on Monday. So I'm hoping the cage can maybe help them work it out. I mean, it sounds crazy. I know that sounds crazy, but I don't know. I feel like when you're in a steel cage, it's a little bit different of a match than just having a normal wrestling match on Raw. So hopefully with that in place, we get a definitive conclusion to this storyline, which has been going on now for 5 months, and we move Becky into something else. And who knows what's next for Trish. But I'm excited for the steel cage personally.
I'll say this: if they do it on a Raw, if they do it on Premium Live event, I'm okay with that. But if they do it on Monday Night Raw, you better have this main event your
Yeah.
Monday Night Raw. You cannot just throw it in the middle of the show like a couple nights ago with Monday Night Raw, because I was like, either they really don't respect this story or something's going to happen. And thankfully, something happened, because it's like, man, if you would just let the feud in there in a 10-minute match at the top of the 10 o'clock hour, and then have Cody and, you know, who was it? Cody and Finn Balor main event
Yeah.
Raw.
Main
Like,
event.
then what are you doing with this match? But hey, I mean, if you're content with it, especially if you're take a couple weeks ago on Drop the Mic, then I'll concede as well.
Yeah, I mean, this is listen, I don't want to keep, going into it. We've got so much more to talk about, but I think ultimately, yes, at first it was a big slight. Everyone felt it was a slight. And then as things have developed, yeah, there was a method to the madness. But I still do feel, I'll say it again, they could have done the Raw match on SummerSlam and gotten the same result and still moved the story along. But I guess they felt they wanted to get eyes on Raw, being in Canada. Trish is, kind of close to her hometown. I know Toronto, but a Canadian Raw, you figure that energy is going to be unmatched. And it just didn't hit because of the double counter. And then obviously we got the steel cage announcement. So then I think for me, it satisfies that I wanted those two to end in a big match. And hopefully it ends on a premium live event. If it's not a PLE that it ends on, you're 100% right. It has to be a main event of Raw if it's not at the PLE. No ifs, ands, or buts there.
Those are your two options, WWE. And one of the other options that one of the female wrestlers apparently have made, whether it was her decision or WWE's, Lacey Evans, as of this morning at midnight, is no longer contracted to WWE. She is gone from the company. She's went through a lot of gimmick changes, whether that's been the Southern Sassy Belle or this very short stint of a Sergeant Slaughter cosplay, whatever the case may be. But, let the record show Lacey Evans actually served. Sergeant Slaughter did not. That's another thing you can point out. I don't want to say I was shocked by Lacey Evans and WWE no longer working together, but what do you think her legacy is going to be with the company? And ultimately, what do you think is next for Lacey Evans or
Oh,
wherever
man.
she's going about now?
Well, her legacy is always going to be the sassy Southern Belle in my personal mind. Like that was the gimmick that when she debuted that stuck with me to this day, where I was like, you know what, that had potential that we didn't really tap into. We gave up on that way too soon. But I think her real legacy is going to be the storyline with Ric Flair, where she was with Charlotte and the possibility that she was dating Ric Flair, trying to date Ric Flair. If you remember that from a few years ago,
Yes,
and
I
then
do.
unfortunately Lacey I think got pregnant, and then she no longer had she was supposed to. I think the rumors or the storylines posted, and you guys can do the research. But I believe at the time there was a conversation that she was going to have a feud with Charlotte at WrestleMania for the title. And then that's what that whole thing with her and Ric Flair and how she wanted to date him. That whole story was supposed to take place and culminate at Mania. And then she got pregnant. And then that whole thing got, thrown off on the back burner. It's a tough one for me. I think I follow her on social media, and I believe she's actually opening a coffee shop. So I think that's her next venture. Is I think she's going to focus on a business, and I think could we see her pop up in another wrestling company? Sure, it happens all the time. I think she'd be a good Impact addition. Trinity worked very well in Impact. I think could you say Lacey Evans is all elite? Maybe. I lean more of an Impact because I feel like that fits her schedule. I think she's more focused on her business ventures now. But hey, best of luck to her in her future. It's unfortunate that it didn't pan out for her and WWE, but never say never. We've seen so many people come and go. So maybe she comes back down the line.
Also, with not only the business, but her family, she's very vocal about being a family oriented person. Impact schedule would do a lot of good for her. You can still be with your family with AEW, as Tony Khan's been very lenient with a lot of that. But yeah, I when I saw her get released as of midnight tonight, their midnight this morning, should I say, then I was like, okay, Impact could do really good with this. We don't know Jordan Grace's, stint, where she's going to be. But Trinity's done really well, as you mentioned, and Lacey Evans could do so as well. We got one more WWE story, and it's part of your Wrestling Wednesday afternoon in a couple days. We got Friday Night SmackDown, and if you watched this past week's Friday Night SmackDown, you saw Edge make an impromptu appearance. Sheamus and the Brawling Brutes come down, and it appears that Edge and Sheamus are going to have a match for the first time ever, which shocked me to no end. But now rumors are circulating because of comments Edge made last year that he wants to retire in Toronto, and people are wondering if this could be Edge's retirement with wrestling for 25 years, celebrating 25 years, and then going out against Sheamus. Mike, I wrote an article about this on Sports Carolina Monthly, and I don't know, man. I don't feel it. I don't feel like this is Edge's last match. What's your gut instinct about What's the
My gut
future for Edge?
says absolutely not. There's no way he's gonna. I mean, I shouldn't say there's no way, but at least I, in my gut, do not feel that he's retiring Friday night at SmackDown against Sheamus. Now, I'm excited for that match. Going to be a banger,
A banger.
but banger after banger after banger. But the whole comments about Edge's retirement, I know he had said that, that was a plan last year where there's a possibility of a retirement. We're going to be in his hometown. I know he has on record of saying that at the time. And then I know that there recently was some comments made by, I think, his trainer that said that,
Mhm.
he was aiming or heading towards a possible retirement. I think a lot of that's gotten, besides Edge's comments, I think a lot of the other stuff has gotten taken kind of out of context. I think his retirement is coming, but I don't think it's now. I'm sure we'll be back in Canada next year. I'm sure there's a spot for Edge on WrestleMania 40 if we were to still see him if he doesn't retire Friday. So I just don't see it just yet. Plus he never won the title, he never lost. So I know he's up there in age, and I know a lot of the talk is like, you can't put titles on, the old time guys. But I think if there's one way to finish the story for Edge, it's to get a title on him, get that world title that he never lost, have a little title run. I don't know how it plays out. I don't know how you play that out. Maybe you got to get him to Raw. But that's my ideal goal, is that he retires with the belt again, and that's the send off, a proper send off. I don't think it's happening Friday. I hope it doesn't happen.
I really hope not. Edge has been one of my favorites. I mentioned this all in the article on Sports Carolina Monthly, but with Edge, it's like, oh man, you could have him, go back to Raw, Damian Priest cash in the Money in the Bank, have Edge wrestle Damian Priest, Edge figure out a way to, win next day, be like, I had to drop this title because of injury. This time I'm dropping it because I've done what I
I've
set
done it.
out to do,
Yeah, I like
and
that. Honestly,
drop
that's
it
that's
on his
good.
own terms.
That's money right there, Mike. Where's the pen? Now this week, this
Yeah,
this week you get the pen.
I get the pin now.
You get the pen this week, because
Oh
that
man,
honestly, I honestly forgot it for a split second. I was like, oh yeah, Priest Judgment Day. That was his boy. Like, Priest beats Seth, cashes in down the line. Edge gets the title. There's a story to be had there. So you got something there. You just put
yeah,
that light bulb.
it'd be pretty nice. And then there was speculation that he might go to AEW if he wraps up with WWE. I know his buddies are there, Christian, the Hardys, but I don't know, man. I don't see that.
It's tough. I feel like Edge is a WWE for lifer kind of guy. I don't think he'll do it. I think you've got more of a chance of Christian coming back and the Hardys coming back to have like a, if you're going to talk like a last tag match between all the tag teams, from the glory days. I think you have a better chance of the Hardys and Christian coming back to WWE, I think, than you have of Edge going to AEW.
Yeah, it just doesn't feel right. Edge also had the opportunity to go back to AEW before he returned to WWE in 2020. He didn't take that opportunity. Now he's wrapping up his career in WWE. And speaking of AEW, we had some other ex WWE guy go to AEW a couple years ago. Everybody was ecstatic. I was at the Greensboro Coliseum when Darby Allin's promo played on the screen about, hey, this open challenge is to anyone who thinks they're the best in the world. And that not Greensboro Coliseum, the Bojangles Coliseum over in Charlotte, everybody erupted, and it was like, whoa, what's happening? And now CM Punk's just been drama for the last year. Made some comments about Hangman Page after their trip to Greensboro Coliseum this past Saturday as part of Collision. That begs the question, Mike. Is CM Punk like actually benefiting AEW at this point? Or has he just become a cancer where it's like, Tony Khan's in way over his head?
Mike, I'm so happy we're talking about this, man, because I personally can't wait to talk about this on my show. I'm going to go very in depth on this, but I think he's a genius. I think he's a genius. I love the elite. I love AEW. I love every wrestler in the company. I think CM Punk's so smart. He said he drops this post Collision promo that you knew people were going to get on social media. He tried to crack a joke and it wasn't taken well. And now everyone's running with it where, oh, there's more beef now with him and Adam Page. And we had beef last year. The whole reason he was gone was, the injury, but also because of some stuff that took place after the media scrum. We've seen that. We've talked. I'm sure you've talked about it. I've talked about it. Everyone has beat that and talked about that. I think the guy's smart. I think every time he does something or says something, everyone takes it and runs with it. And they go and they fill in the blanks. And you've got the Dave Meltzers of the world filling in blanks of, well, this person said that CM Punk said I can't be on Collision because I don't like vanilla ice cream. It's like something as outlandish as that, is making news and making reports. And what is that? Ladies and gentlemen, that's publicity. Whether it's good, whether it's bad, you're talking about CM Punk, you're talking about AEW, and the fires just keep getting bigger with this. So I think this is all going to end up becoming this big work. Everyone's going to get worked. CM Punk, the Elite, Hangman Adam Page probably talked maybe a couple months ago. Who knows? Everything's hush hush, and I think there's some sort of match headed our way, and it's going to take us all by storm, and it's going to blindside us, and we're not even going to expect it because we think they don't like each other.
Well, I was on that track. I believe a lot of the stuff with Brawl Out was a work to give CM Punk more time from the injury, like all this stuff. And then I'm reading some of the stuff that's happening with like, hey, this person's been told not to come to Collision. This person's been told not to come to Collision. I'm like, okay, it's still work. It's still work. But then I look at All In. Unless you have, and granted, All In is a week from this Sunday, unless you have CM Punk versus Hangman Page or CM Punk versus Kenny Omega, we get FTR and the Young Bucks. We already have that matchup. Then I can't help but think that there's something real going on here because you got to cash in on perhaps the biggest wrestling show, at least in your company, perhaps of all time, with CM Punk really wrestling like Hangman Page or Kenny Omega.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, this is a tough one for me because they're booking All In, and it seems like there's a theme with All In where a lot of it is kind of an ode to the first All In. They had a 4-way women's match on the first All In. We're getting a 4-way women's match on this All In. We had a tag match that the Bucks were participated in. We're getting that now. A couple, other matches I'm sure will be announced later for Dynamite, and then of course heading into the weekend with the rest of the AEW shows. But I don't know if the Punk Elite match is going to happen at All In. I think that could be something that they save for All Out. I think Chicago, CM Punk's crowd, and the Kenny Omega match or the Page match. I think you want to really do this and you want to like hint at it and tease and leave these little crumbs. The crumbs might lead to All Out where Punk and Page finally meet. I hope they don't use All In as a device to get to All Out. That's my one hope for this. But when you have 2 pay-per-views back to back, something has to lead into something else. So it's a toughie.
Yeah, they put themselves in a weird position there. We'll have to see what happens in terms of CM Punk and who he wrestles at All In Wembley Stadium or All Out in Chicago. And we'll have to see what happens with the members of the Jericho Appreciation Society. The Jericho Appreciation Society last week on Dynamite disbanded, went their own separate ways. Everybody got some mic time to tell Chris Jericho that they were leaving him. And Sammy Guevara kind of left the door open, kind of like a breakup when you like break up with somebody and you're like, well, maybe down the road, if you get everything figured out. And, we've all heard that one before, right? But it was very different in terms of how Jericho Appreciation Society disbanded and then the Inner Circle disbanded. Now that we can look in the rearview mirror of both the Jericho Appreciation Society and the Inner Circle, what do you think was the strongest group that Jericho was a part of?
This is a good one, Mike. You're on the ball today, brother.
You're
The
talking about me, Mike, not you,
Oh
Mike,
no,
right?
I'm talking about you, Mike. No, I'm
Okay,
not talking
okay.
about. I'm not talking
Yeah,
about
I mean
myself. Like
you're on the ball too, you know?
this is why we do this. This
We
is
do
this is what we have. I
Mike and
love it.
Mike talking about wrestling.
God, that's what more could you ask for? Listen, with it's tough, man. It's tough. There's a lot of different moving pieces for that, and I don't know. What do you think about this?
So I really loved the Inner Circle. Jericho Appreciation Society, I wasn't a fan of at the first. But then I started learning about the stories. I listened to Jericho's podcast, Talk is Jericho. I started learning about the stories of how he was connected to Dane Garcia, how he was connected to 2.0, how he was connected to these guys. I was like, huh, kind of makes sense that everybody
Yeah,
would appreciate Chris Jericho. But man, from that first episode with the Inner Circle coming together, I'm like, man, there's nothing like the OG. And I don't know
yeah.
if they captured that with the Jericho Appreciation Society.
I think the inner circle was better. I will agree to that. I like the inner circle group because you had Santana or and Ortiz in that group, and those dudes. Anytime those dudes are involved in a group, it's serious business. So I would say the inner circle was more of a wrestling faction, and the Jericho Appreciation
Mm.
Society was exactly what it was, a sports entertainment faction. So that's I think that's the core right there, right? The inner circle was the wrestling faction that you would see, if you were to, hop in on a New Japan Pro Wrestling. You look at the Blackpool Combat Club, right? Those are wrestling factions. The Jericho Appreciation Society, that's a sports entertainment faction, and that's what the whole thing was about. Was they're not wrestlers. Jericho's a sports entertainer. That was the whole concept. I thought it worked. I thought it was funny. I thought it was genius. Like, think about it. AEW wrestling, the whole core about AEW is it's about the wrestling. We don't get into the silly sports entertainment at the time. And then you have this group that comes in and their whole shtick is we're sports entertainers. We don't
Oh
care about
man,
wrestling. Like that's so I
dude,
wish more people would have clicked with that because like it made sense for me.
the heat at the beginning of that was so like, oh my gosh, how
With
do
the
you get us to
tearing of
boo him?
Daniel Garcia between with the wrestling and the sports entertainment, there were so many cool little there was
And he followed Chris Jericho because he appreciates Chris Jericho. Like that is like the essence of the Jericho Appreciation Society. It's interesting to note that, the futures of everybody in this group are kind of up in the air. Like Jake Hager with the MMA, like how much is he around AEW? Is he just kind of like fizzling out now that AEW's roster's gotten bigger? Ty Mello is currently pregnant, so she's out of action. Anna Jay trying to find her footing. She had that main event against Hikaru Shida, even though she lost. She was in the main event of AEW Dynamite. Daniel Garcia, what does he do? 2.0, what do they do? The two people I'm looking at, Mike, I don't know if you can shine some light on this, is Sammy Guevara, is dubbed as one of the four pillars of AEW, but we haven't seen Sammy Guevara truly be on his own. He's been with Chris Jericho ever since AEW's inception. Inner Circle, Jericho Appreciation Society,
yeah.
and then Chris Jericho. Is he going to join the Don Callis family this week? Who
Ooh.
knows? Like
Ooh, good point.
we'll find this all out tonight potentially on Dynamite, but what do you expect between Jericho and Guevara moving forward?
I mean, the way they left it open ended, with Sammy basically saying, "Listen, I'm going to be here for you when you get your act together, Chris. But until then, I'm not in your corner, man. If you need me, I might be there. Yeah, maybe, right?
Just like a
I like,
breakup, right?
right, just like a breakup. Like it's not you, it's me, or we could still be friends. Uh, so I think you hit on a valid point. Sammy has never been on his own. So there is a line there where you could say maybe Chris gets him in the Callis family, or it's an ultimate swerve and it's Sammy the whole time that joins the Callis family and Chris is out. But
Oh,
like I'm all about wild swerves. Like if I was a wrestler booker, I'd be having twist after twist. This would be an M. Night Shyamalan movie. So
Dude, I lost the pin you threw back at me. I'm sorry.
Ah,
I'm trying to relocate that right
we're gonna have to
now.
put that on a little leash for you.
Dude, I'm so bad at losing things. I mean, it is once a week I will lose my keys. Easy.
That I can understand that. I mean, if my head wasn't attached to my body, I don't think it'd be here.
Dude, for real. Like, what's with us mics not having the mind to remember things?
I
Other,
don't know, man.
other than, hey, we got a wrestling podcast to do Wednesday at
Yeah,
2 o'clock, 11 a.m. your time.
11 a.m. my time, baby. We love it.
Love it, man. It'll be interesting to see Jericho if he joins the Don Callis family tonight. Sammy Guevara, his future, and if he can step up. We've seen Jungle Boy step up as well. Jungle Boy wrestled RVD last week on Dynamite. That was last week?
Hmm.
RVD, I'll be honest, I wasn't expecting much from him. I was really impressed. I wouldn't mind him signing a big contract with AEW or WWE for a good retirement tour. But what other ECW legend would you want Jack Perry to compete against now in this new, like, I hate ECW, this FTW title's garbage, and I'm better than everybody else?
Dude, I'm gonna be honest. I'm thinking about a couple different names, but I honestly, truthfully, don't know who's still with us. So please bear with me. I would say right off the top of my head, I think a really funny one would be the Sandman. I think if he's still around and he can give us a kendo stick, beer, shoot the beer in the crowd vibe. I think that'd be a really fun one. Raven, always an interesting one. If he can do it, Tommy Dreamer.
Tommy could
I
do
know
it.
Tommy could do it. I know he's battling some stuff and he's going through some stuff. If it ever happened, of course, Bubba Ray, of course, absolutely. And just for the pure fun part of it, Blue Meanie, dude, I think that'd be even
Oh
funny. I
my
think that'd just be a
gosh, you're a
funny one.
Blue Meanie guy?
Nah, I'm not like a massive Blue Meanie guy, but I think he was funny. I think he was entertaining back in his day. I mean, I thought it was. I'm one of those weirdos that like if it makes me laugh or like it gets a reaction out of me, like it was good wrestling.
Mm. Now, I will say this. It's kind of fitting if we get Taz
Oh,
to
I hope
step back
so.
in the ring versus Jack Perry. I feel like that's where it's leading, that Taz agrees to a one-off against Jack Perry for the FTW title. But man, if Sabu or Raven were in their
Oh,
prime, oh my
Sabu.
gosh, like, unfortunately, we haven't seen Sabu in his prime in years, but
Yeah.
he
Oh, we
would.
saw him with Adam Cole and Chris Jericho, which was strange.
Yeah, it's odd right there. We're closing in on the end of the Drop the Mic episode, but I wanted to throw in one more question for you because we got a couple people, admittedly probably outside their prime, in a Texas Chainsaw Massacre death match tonight on Dynamite between Jeff Jarrett and Jeff Hardy. Now, these two Jeffs, very controversial figures, Mike. Before you head just spins out of everything, we're going to play a little game with this. Uh, what Jeff are you going to keep? What Jeff are you going to cut? Would you rather keep Jeff Jarrett or Jeff Hardy in your company if you're running AEW?
Oh man, you're gonna do this to me with the Jeff Hardy, Matt Hardy picture like above my head right here where those
Oh, I
behind the
definitely.
logo.
Yes.
Oh man, yeah, I'm biased as all can be here, but Jeff Hardy. I know. See right there, the Hardy Boys signed picture from Double or Nothing, 2022. Those are my boys, man. They'll always forever be my boys. Anybody ever ask me who's your favorite wrestler, favorite wrestlers? The Hardy Boys, forever and always. I know it's going to get a lot of love here because North Carolina guys, North Carolina show. But yeah, it's Jeff Hardy for me. How about you? Is it Jarrett?
I love Jarrett.
Really?
Well, I've met all three of them, by the way.
Oh, nice.
Big North Carolina ties, everything. Jeff, I met super young. Matt, I've met a billion times. But Jeff Hardy's like just a shell of his former self. It's really sad to see him with all the stunts. And then, can he stay with the right level head?
Hmm.
I don't know. That's a big question. Jeff Jarrett, made a lifelong fan of me because back in 05, I was like, 6 at the time. He was the NWA World Champion, and he was wrestling over in the small town, Lenoir, North Carolina, wrestling Dusty Rhodes that night. Tell you how long that was.
Wow.
And at 6 years old, he actually let me hold the 10 pounds of gold. And there's a picture somewhere of me holding that gold. So that, yeah, I'm keeping Jeff Jarrett. He's not in the worst shape either.
No.
He can still garner heat. Let me get Jeff Jarrett remaining on AEW programming if I had to choose between him or Hardy. But Mike, we are up against it on Tobacco Road Sports Radio as part of their Wrestling Wednesday card. Where can they find you, my guy?
You can find me like last time. You can find me on Spotify, Apple, Google, Amazon Podcasts, anywhere you find your podcast. Mouthing Off with Mike Wrestling Podcast. Do a search. You want to follow me on socials and keep up with what I got talking about, or just update with the show? It's MOWM_podcast across all social media channels.
You got to go follow him. He's doing really good stuff. I'm excited that we've connected, collab. We'll keep doing these as well. Next week, we got AEW All In, a full breakdown of the historic All In event at Wembley. That's exceeding my expectations. Shout out Matt Cosgrove. You're right on that regard. But yeah, subscribe to the Tobacco Road Sports Radio YouTube channel, the home of the Drop the Mic Wrestling podcast. Follow us on Instagram at Drop the Mic Wrestling. But until next time, thanks so much, Mike, from Mouthing Off with Mike, for stopping by today on Drop the Mic today. Go look at his stuff on Spotify. It's really good. Tune into Outta Pocket with Michael Davis at its new time of 3 p.m. Eastern, live this Friday. Engage with us. We'll talk a lot about NFL. We might throw some wrestling stuff in as well. It'll be on WWBG 1470 AM. It'll be on Tobacco Road Sports Radio's YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe. And whatever you do, don't drop the mic. We will see you all next week.